Hello and welcome. My name's Jake Haynes. This is the course for business owners specifically looking to diagnose software within their business. Today I'm going to show you in 3 steps how you can diagnose your software within the business to figure out what's truly going on without a technical background required. So you can get to the heart of really what's the issue that you're truly solving for. You can better understand from that point on what your opportunity cost and ROI is for either leaving that as is or what you can afford to build or to buy. And then the next section is going to show you lastly, exactly should you build, should you buy, and who falls within each one of those buckets. Because even though I own a custom development shop, custom is not for everyone. So again, my name is Jacob Haynes, and I started Pilot West Studios for non-technical business owners because me and my partner Adam saw that there's just such a huge vacuum of trusted software development companies who understood business at the end of the day and could boil down business needs and turn it into revenue generating software. And so I'm out of Nashville, Tennessee, and this is a course that I've been able to take from a culmination of hundreds of conversations with non-technical business owners and operators. And as you can see, I'm pulling some visuals from the ebook that I wrote, again, as a culmination of hundreds of conversations that we've had with non-technical business owners and operators. And we've boiled down a lot of these conversations and lessons that we've learned from you specifically that we can kind of lead you up to understanding better about your business and what you should do with your software so that you can know whether or not it's the right fit for you, what's the right fit for you, and how to have that conversation. In fact, I'll be listing this at the bottom of this video if you want to follow along or if you want to check out the whole thing, where we go over things like how to identify that when your software's become a liability, what are your options, what's your budget, how to talk to software professionals, and if you decide to build something, how do you actually manage a software project successfully, considering that you don't have a technical background, and some goodies like some worksheets and ROI calculators and things like that that you can work out of. So let's get into the first chapter, which is chapter 1. How do you identify what is the problem within your software and what is the thing that you should be solving for at the end of the day? Now, when Adam and I, again, my co-founder and I, meet with business owners to define, they want to build software, we spend most of our time not really in the software, but more of understanding the business. And if you've dealt with a software developer before or an agency, you probably understand where I'm coming from, where it's super frustrating, right? Because most technical people, most software development companies just want to try to understand what you're trying to build enough just to be able to send you a quote and to hopefully get you to say yes. But we really want to take a lot of time to understand the underlying problem that we're solving for. Because me and Adam, we don't care if you say, I want to build X, Y, and Z. When if we look in your business, you actually need A, B, C. It's not what you tell us to build. It's what we work on collaboratively to define as what is the underlying problem. Because ultimately, we want you to be super happy with whatever we build and to have a thriving, successful business because of something that we've done. And we recognize that it's going to first start with the diagnosis is going to give you the most potent prescription. So let's talk about that. How do we define better when our software has become a liability? And what are the red flags that we see when it's, yes, okay, this is time for us to move on from your current system and maybe even consider custom. So here are some big red flags that, you've outgrown your system and you should probably do something about it. First one is you're manually entering the same data multiple times. This is probably the biggest cardinal sin that we see of all the businesses. That means that, maybe you're taking paper invoice, and you're uploading into one system into the CRM, then you have to upload it into the accounting system, then you have to upload it into your operating system. And before you know it, you've taken the same information from an invoice and you've uploaded it to 3 or 4 different software. To where instead, presumably how software works, if it was built correctly, you should be able to upload it, type it into one place, and it instead flows out to the appropriate places, rather than you having to piece by piece by piece input the right information, and then you trying to consolidate that at the end to maybe get some analytics or visibility at the end of it. Or maybe your team is constantly complaining about the system. You're trying to grow, you're trying to expand your business, but you're beginning to see that over and over and over again. Your bottleneck is how you run your business. It's the operations and specifically the software. Maybe it's 20 plus, 30 plus years old, where that's some customers that we've dealt with. That's a very common occurrence. If you're especially 20 plus years old, you probably have some 20 plus year old software, and that becomes really problematic because fields stop working, it starts crashing. You have to have other software work with it that's more modernized, but they don't play well together, so it creates complexity. And instead of software making your life easier, you're almost like, man, I almost wish I'd just go back to pen and paper, because it'd be easier than taking pen and paper, uploading it into 5 or 6 different software, right? Or simple tasks require complex workarounds. You'll know this is you if the idea of hiring makes you really nervous. And not because you want to hire someone on and train them, but having to show them and train them on the system, because you can't just set someone in to do their work and to input data, but you have to explain, well, actually this thing needs to go here, and then you have to move this over to this field, and then you have to create this Excel spreadsheet, you have to download this, you have to move this over here. If it becomes just such a nightmare onboarding because of the software, then that's a big red flag that you should probably fix the software. Another big one is that you have a lack of visibility or reporting or dashboards into your business, like key metrics, right, of growth, accounting, like big data that will help give you some serious insights into what levers you can pull within your business to continue to get it to grow. If you need to create a lot of exporting and data manipulation and spreadsheet manipulation to get it moving in the right direction, or maybe you just have to buy a separate software to try to figure out some analytics, it'd probably be best if you could just make sure that the software does it within it. And of course, a more obvious one is your customers experience friction. So if you're direct to consumer, you're B2C, or D2C, then this is a really important one, because if you have a friction within the business, within the transaction of your customer, then you're losing out on customer because your technology is not up to speed. It doesn't work. It's not easy to work with. And ultimately, if you just fix that thing, then you could see some additional growth just by more people being able to be processed faster and easier. I think a better thing to kind of think in broad strokes when we sit down with a business owner and we really want to ask them, the main question, which is like, what is your biggest bottleneck within your system? It might be manual entry. It might be, again, data entry. It might be all the workarounds. It's best that you write those out and articulate them. Put pen to paper exactly with what the problem is. Because if you do decide to build software, and that's the best thing for you, you don't want to articulate software language because you don't know that. And software development companies shouldn't expect you to know that. But you should be able to clearly articulate the problems, and the problems with how data flows, or the problems that happen within your business. And whenever I think of getting to the root of a problem, I think of it in 3 layers. And this is kind of a heuristic that I built. It's 3-layer deep discovery. So let's say you find a problem within your business. You find that your software is doing X, Y, and Z. Like maybe you're finding that your people are spending 2 or 3 hours every day doing manual entry. That's a real customer of ours. They're having one full-time employee spending 3 hours a day inputting data into their old software, into all the different pieces. Okay, well, let's go. That's the first layer. Let's get to the second layer. Well, what does that actually mean? Okay, manual entry, does that really matter? Should you care? Well, what happens when you have to do 3 hours of manual entry? Let's kind of peel it back a little bit further. So what happens when you have to do that thing? Well, when my full-time employee has to do 3 hours of manual entry, it not only slows things down and also creates potential errors and fat fingering to occur within that could make a customer upset, but also a person that should be helping our clients be happier and more fulfilled are now spending more time doing data entry. Okay, let's go another layer deep. Well, how does that affect you as the business owner when you have 3 hours of data entry and fat fingering and errors and time spent when that person could be spending it on revenue generating opportunities. Well, that person could then be spending 3 hours on revenue generating opportunity. I could be making more profit at the end of the day by getting more productivity out of a person who's now doing data entry. Okay, then the last layer is like, how does that affect the business? Well, it's affecting growth because we could be, maybe seeing a 5 or 10% increase in revenue if that person wasn't spending, 20, 30% of their day just putting data into a system. Okay, now we're getting to the heart of things, right? So this sounds very basic, very simplistic, but the reason why is because a lot of people haven't articulated these things. So don't just look at something at face value. When you see one of these here, I want you to articulate what is the underlying chaos that occurs, like in the business. What's the problem within the business that occurs? How does that affect you, that underlying problem? And how does that equate to affecting the business? What is the ultimate problem within the business that thing creates? And oftentimes it comes to either money and or time.